Hello, everyone. It's Mrs. Fontre here. And today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite times in all of art history, and that is the Renaissance. Can you say Renaissance? Renaissance. It's really kind of a fun word to say. So let's jump right in and talk about how it fits into the rest of art history. All right. Renaissance was around 1400 or 1400 to 1600 CE, or people call it AD sometimes too. So that's like our common era. This is kind of close to where we are today. And Renaissance actually means rebirth or renewal, or kind of like bringing something back to life. And before the Renaissance, Europe fell into this time known as the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages. And the Renaissance was about rediscovering the old ways that the Greeks and Romans used to do things, all right? So they started to value education more, and science and art, which is why we're talking about it. Literature and writing and music and people, they started to kind of bring back some old values from the ancient times. And some very famous artists during these times, and we'll talk a little bit more about them, are Donatello, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael. Okay, maybe those names sound a little familiar, and we'll talk about why in just a minute. But if you think, whoa, wait a second, like what all happened in between there? Because we talked about cave art earlier this year. We talked about ancient Mesopotamian art, and usually we talk about ancient Egyptian art as well. We kind of do those every other year, but what happened in between? So let me show you with art and how things kind of changed, all right? So if you look back at sculptures from ancient Egyptian times, they were pretty like new, and like there was a new thing to do. So the people didn't look quite as realistic, and they had their arms kind of close to the body so they wouldn't get broken off. But as time went on with the Greeks and the Romans, they learned how to get pretty good at making these sculptures look like actual people. You can see from the timeline of how the statues changed, they look more and more realistic, right? All the way up to the Romans with that really realistic looking robe that she has on with all those frillies and those blowing in the wind, looks really realistic, right? But then after the Romans came these Middle Ages or the Dark Ages. And you can see on the left, there is a sculpture from the Roman times that's very detailed, very realistic. You can see like the fabric, it looks like a real person almost, right? But in the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages, art wasn't really as important anymore. They wanted art for one main reason, and that was to kind of tell the story of Christianity or religion, because that's what was really important about at that time. So it didn't really matter if the art was as realistic as it used to be, as long as it told the story they wanted, okay? So that's why art changed, because they valued or thought things were more important, which happens sometimes in history, right? And so this is where the Renaissance comes back into play, where we bring these old ideas back, these old styles, these old things that are important, and here we are, all right? So, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, there are four very famous artists from this time, Donatello, Leonardo da Vinci, Raphael, and Michelangelo, and you might know them from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, I'm not sure who created this show or thought it'd be good to name them after Renaissance artists, but hey, it's an easy way to remember all of them, right? So, I like to pretend that they're the heroes, though. Give them the masks and the superpowers. So, let's get into some art that's new from the Renaissance and compare it to some art that we may have seen from other classes. So, for example, this is from this piece on the right is cave art with two bisons, which is a sculpture with clay around some rocks in a cave. And the one on the left from the Renaissance is called The Pieta by Michelangelo. Now, normally in class, we have a big discussion to see what is similar or what's different. So maybe take a minute to think, how are these similar? How are these different? One thing that's similar is they're both three-dimensional. They're both something made out of clay or marble. So it's something you could walk around and see all the way around. But one thing that's very different is even though they're both realistic, you can both tell what they are. They're people and animals. Well, one of them is animals and one of them is a person and people, and they're very realistic, right? It almost looks like you could put your hands right into that lady's robes. It looks like real, right? And I know a lot of people, when they see this piece at first, they think, oh my gosh, like there's a dude that's just laying there. Well, the story behind this piece is that it's Mary and Jesus after her son died. So it's supposed to be really kind of a sad piece. So he wouldn't be wearing a full piece suit, right? He died. So it's kind of sad. But anyway, the whole point of the Renaissance is being realistic and kind of having some religious stories behind it too, to kind of bring the Middle Ages together with the Renaissance. So that's how that kind of happened. All right. So again, it's very, very realistic, right? Here's another one to kind of look at, the Renaissance versus ancient Egyptian. The painting from the Renaissance is done by Raphael. And the one on the right, we don't know the artist because it's so old, but maybe you can see that they are both people, right? They're both people that are painted, but the one from the Renaissance by Raphael is very realistic, right? You can see those pudgy little baby arms. It looks like you could just give a baby a little pinch on the cheek. It's so realistic, right? There's light and dark and medium values all through it. Like the Egyptian one is all just solid black hair or solid skin or solid colors. It's very solid. But even just looking at like this lady's red shirt, look how many different types of red are mixed in, right? There's light red, medium red, dark red, there's shadows. There's so many colors in that, right? So it looks a little bit more realistic. Okay? All right, on to one more to show you. We'll be talking about some more Impressionist artists in the future here, but one of them we like talking about is Claude Monet, and you can see his painting on the right with lots of bright colors and kind of a sunset, a little fuzzy looking. And the one on the left is a painting by Leonardo da Vinci, right? You can see, again, I think the big theme here is it's very realistic, right? You can see the people, there's an angel, there's a garden, there's some landscape in the way back. It looks pretty realistic. Monet has really bright colors. And do they have as bright of colors from the Renaissance? Not as bright as Monet. And his artwork was made a couple hundred years later, so they had better paints then. So the colors are much brighter for Impressionist and Monet's kind of art. All right. So from here, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to get out of here for just a second, but I'm going to be getting into what your grades project is, because it might be based on one of the artists we learned about and maybe some other common thing from Renaissance. So stay tuned and find out. All right, 5th grade, for your Renaissance project, we're going to be playing around with 1-point perspective. If you remember last year, we did shapes where we had a couple on the top, a couple on the bottom, and we connected the corners of the shapes to the vanishing points. All right. It's a very, very similar idea, except for instead of using normal type shapes like triangles, squares, we're going to be using your name. All right. So for this project, I'll walk you through how to kind of draw block letters, because we're going to essentially make the letters into shapes. But you're going to need a pencil, piece of paper, and today a ruler or some sort of straight edge. You're not going to be measuring anything exactly, but something that is flat that can help you draw a line. Okay, so let me switch my camera and tell us how we're going to get started on this. All right, because I know drawing block letters can be a challenge sometimes. So the best way I would do it, or how I would lay it out. So you're going to be spelling your name, like I said, and depending on how many letters are in your name, you might want to choose your first name or your last name. I'd like to have at least 3 letters, okay? If you have a shorter name, try to pick at least one with 3 letters, all right? So I get a little bit of practice with this. But for mine, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to do Fondre, and that's 6 letters. So I'm going to kind of think, okay, I want it to be I want it to be either towards the top or towards the bottom. And I'm going to do towards the top because I have a little bit more room up there. And I'm going to very lightly draw a line that just goes across my paper. Okay. So I know, okay, I'm going to put my name on top of that line. So it's all going to be the same. And to make sure we keep the top the same too, I'm going to draw another line, a parallel line. So that means it will never hit each other. Well, again, I'm doing it very, very lightly because we're going to actually end up erasing this later. Well, not later. From there, I'm going to move my camera a little bit. We're going to put our block letters in between these two lines. So I like to use a ruler to help make sure it's really, really straight, really crisp lines. But it's up to you where you want it. It could be kind of on the left or the right, or maybe it's right in the middle. But as long as you get your name with block letters, I'll be happy. All right. If you're looking for trying to figure out how to draw a certain letter, Google is a good place to go and typing in block letters just to see. You will probably encounter some curvy lines, so draw them as curvy lines. That's totally okay. But in the meantime, I'm going to quick write my name. You can pause the video if you need to, but I'm going to write my name. You should write yours too. All right. All right, friends. So I have written my name with block letters. Okay. I have 6 letters. That works for me. And like the vanishing point from last year, if you recall doing that, we're going to put a dot, an actual point, not a big scribbly circle, because we want it to be exact. And we're going to put it somewhere below our name or above your name, depending on which way you did this. That's fine too. But if you have a lot of space on the bottom, put it at the bottom. If you have a lot of space at the top, put it at the top. So you can put it towards the left or the right or the middle. I'm going to kind of put mine kind of in the leftish side today. All right, just a dot. And anywhere there is a corner, okay? So that would be, if you look at the bottom of F, this point and this point, and there is technically a corner here, even though it goes in. Corner, 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 corner. There are a lot of corners in this, which makes it a little more tricky. But every corner, we will try to connect it to our point. So what I mean by that is, I'm going to use my ruler and my pencil to kind of push my ruler towards my letters, kind of like a clock almost. And as soon as my ruler hits a corner, like the bottom of that F, I'm going to say, okay, can I do a line from the corner to my point? And if I can, I'm going to draw it. Okay. I find it's easiest to start by doing the bottoms of my letters first, because nothing should really get in the way of that. So I'm going to keep going by connecting all of these bottom corners of every letter to my point. I'm going to speed up here, but I will come back when I get to my D and my R, because I got some curves, and I'm sure you might have some curves in your name too. All right, so connect those bottom points, and I'll be right back with you. All right, you can see I got all of my bottoms starting to line up here, but I got to my letter D. Similar idea with the R, but this is towards the top of my letter. So how this works when you have a curve that you're going to meet, maybe you have an S, maybe you have a D yourself, maybe you have a P or a B. Instead of finding a corner, because clearly there is no corner here, it is a curvy line. What you're going to do, you put your pencil back on your point and your ruler, and you're going to just kind of skim it over that letter until it reaches the almost off that letter, and that is where you connect it. Okay, curves are a little tricky, but when you do that, it barely connects with that side of the letter D. All right, so I'm going to finish up the letter, the bottoms of my R and my E, and then I'll get back to the rest of this. All right. All right, so I got all the bottoms connected, and it's starting to look like it's popping out at you. That's kind of the goal here. We wanted to have that pizzazz, that wow, that like 3D movie effect happening here. All right, so we did all the bottom corners, which is fine and dandy. Whoopsie, I didn't mean to connect that one. Anyway, but now we have to talk about the top and the middle corners here. All right, because some of them could connect to the vanishing point, but some of them might only kind of connect. And what I mean by that is, this is what I like to call the line game in elementary school. So for example, if I have my point here and I can connect my line to another corner up here, you can definitely still do that. Okay, so that corner of my F works. I can go right there. But for example, my top letter of my corner A, okay, if I I'm doing, actually, let's finish my letter F first, just so I'm on the same page. And some of them you might not be able to connect, like this corner right here. If I were trying to connect it, it's just in line with the other line, so I can't really do that one again. Or the one up here. If I try to connect that one, it hits the letter F. I can't do that. So this top corner F, if I go up here, I can do it a little bit, and I have nothing quite in my way, so I can do that one. But this one I couldn't do because it would hit my letter F. All right. So let's do my letter N, because that's going to be a pretty obvious one. From my dot, my point, to my letter N, you can see I can kind of start going down to my vanishing point. However, the letter A is in the way, right? So if I were trying to go from here to here, I would cut into my letter A, and I can't do that. So for this line game, I'm going to put my pencil on that corner and line it up with that vanishing point. However, if I'm about to hit the letter, I then stop. Okay, you still have to draw it. Hi-ya. But as soon as you hit your letter A or a letter next to it, you have to stop. Okay, so then it still kind of looks like the side of the letter N, but it goes behind the letter A. This gets a little tricky here, right? So same thing with this top of my letter N. All right, there's going to be a corner here that I can't connect because it would chop my N off here. So if I go to this one and I go to my vanishing point, I can draw a little bit, but then it would hit my N again. Okay, it's kind of hard to see here. So if I go here and I line it up, I can go this far, but then I hit the letter N, so I have to stop. Okay, but it still makes it look like it's popping out. That's kind of the trick here, trying to get the fronts and the sides of the letter. So Levy, if I grab my letter A I have in my classroom, we're pretending it's almost like a block letter. Okay, so you can see the tops and you can see the sides. Okay, sometimes depending on where your dot is, you'll see more of one side than the other. Okay, so you'll see a side and a front. And the whole idea here is while you're doing this, and it makes these letters look three-dimensional. Like this is an actual a solid chunk of wood that this letter is on. So it kind of gives that illusion down here, okay, that these are actually three-dimensional. So from here, I'm also going to speed it up a little bit to finish connecting my A and my D and my R and my E. I'm going to finish this up. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna stop here because I don't think me talking over the same thing over and over is gonna help you out anymore. So let me switch cameras here and talk to you face to face. All right. So, like I said, this gets to be a lot because there are so many corners that you've made. Because last year, like I said, for fourth grade, you had a shape with maybe 4 corners or 3 corners or 5. But block letters, which are shapes, had a lot more corners in them. Okay, if you just look at the letter F, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 corners for just one letter. So you have to try every corner to match up to your vanishing point. And some of them might not work, and that's okay. So like this corner, it would cut my F in half, and I can't do it. So if it hits anything, or if anything gets in the way, you can't do it. However, there might be some space to go a little ways, and then you have to stop because then something got in the way. All right. So the idea here when you're done is that it looks like it's popping out at you. It's kind of three-dimensional, like a movie. Okay. So I know that was a lot. I'm sorry. It's a lot. This is a tricky project and it does take a lot of time in class. We usually spend 2 or 3 days on this. So once I post this video, I'll give you updates as to whether or not we're still doing it in class or not, because I don't want to give you extra bonus work while everyone here is catching up too. So really take your time on this. Maybe spend half an hour starting it, get back to it later, and just kind of take your time going through it, okay? If you try to do it all in one sitting, it gets to be a lot. So when you are finished with all of these lines, I would like you to color them in. So if you have maybe 2 or 3 colors, don't go too color crazy. All the lines from that letter, your letter F or S or T or whatever letter you're going on, all of the lines connected to that should be the same color. Okay, so they might be a couple of them, there might be a lot of them. Okay, so and that includes the letter and any lines that are maybe towards the top as well. So if you want to take a peek at this with me, I always have my open calls on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock. So I post a reminder about that too if you want to come and chat and maybe show me where you're at and if you've got it all or if you don't have it all. So if you have any other questions, comments, concerns, please let me know. I'm always an email away for sure. Comment in the Google Classroom, whatever you need to do. I'll get back to you, okay? So I'm really excited to see what you come up with. Hopefully we all are successful with getting that 1 point perspective from the Renaissance down. All right? Happy creating.